Someone in our Facebook group asked if we'd make a video about Neocolor 2 water-soluble wax pastel. So here it is. The first thing I want to mention is paper. If you're going to use a fair bit of water with the pastels, I would suggest you use a mixed media paper. I like Canson Imagine, that's got a really nice smooth surface, and Daler Rowney mixed media paper. It's got a little bit more tooth in that one. But you can also use a tone mixed media paper, and I've actually managed to use a heavyweight coloured paper, this yellow here, but only when I use water very sparingly on that. There are two types of Neocolor wax pastels. There's Neocolor 2, which I think are probably the most popular ones, and they're water soluble, whereas the Neocolor 1 aren't. Now this does mean that if you've got both, you can use the two together to create effects. So for example, if you look at this here, I've used a white wax non-soluble Neocolor 1 with a soluble green Neocolor 2. And you see when I add water, the green blends, whereas the white stays where it is. And you can see there's some other effects. I've done a similar sort of thing here too. Now someone asked how hard you should press on the pastels, and this all depends what sort of effect you're going for. So if you use them very lightly and add water, you'll get a very soft, quite transparent watercolour-like effect. But if you press harder and make the pigment quite dense, when you add water, it will look a lot more like gouache, be a lot brighter and punchier. I find the easiest way to blend colours is to choose two colours that aren't too far away from each other, like a yellow and an orange, or a light green and a darker green like I have here. If you use them lightly, you can get a really nice soft watercolour-like blend. If you use them heavier and then add the lighter green over the top of the darker, it will start to give a blended effect. Then when you add water to the thicker pastel, it's a lot more tricky to mix than the paler one. It does tend to just push around, so you have to be really careful and adjust the amount of water you're adding. One thing you need to consider when you're working is that your pastels will get dirty, and if you're not careful, you'll transfer the colour your pastel has picked up back onto the page and you'll get kind of a grungy mess. So to avoid this, wipe the end of your pastel with either a bit of kitchen towel or an old rag. Getting small details drawn with these pastels can be a bit tricky. Now one way to do it is to sharpen the crayon. And I used a scalpel to do this, but you could use a craft knife, or if you've got a pencil sharpener that's got the bigger hole, that might work too. And if you want, you can keep the shavings and put them in a little container and use those like paint. Once you've got your sharpened pastel, you can see here that you can get a much finer line with it. Now another thing you can do is get a wet brush or a damp brush and dab it on the end of the Neocolor, and then use that like paint to get a fine line as well. Neocolors also work well with mixed media. They work really well over backgrounds. Now this one has been created using acrylic inks, but you could use acrylic paint or watercolours. You can see that the lighter colour pastels will allow the text from this torn book page to show through, while the darker colours are much more opaque, so show less text. I've heard people say how tricky Neocolors are to write or draw over the top of, and that's if you've used the pastel really thickly. Now the best thing I've found for this is to either sharpen one of the crayons like I showed you before, or to use a Stabilo all black pencil. Now these pencils will draw over pretty much anything. They're said that they're made to draw over glass. And as well, they are water soluble. Now I've got a black one here, but you can get them in all different colours and also a graphite one as well. Before you start a drawing with Neocolors, if you're going to use a lot of water, I would highly recommend you tape down your paper to a board with masking tape. It will stop the paper buckling as much as it would normally. Now this is a semi-abstract face that I drew for the Sky Portrait Artist of the Week paint along. I start with a pencil drawing, and then for these drawings I generally start with a yellow pastel and then move on to the darker colours. That way my yellow doesn't get too messy with the darker colours. However, I do go back and forth, go in and out with different colours, both light and dark, so I don't work in a strict light to dark manner. There are no real rules to how you use them. It's basically what works best for you for what you're drawing at the time. Once I have the colour how I want it, I will smooth the pastels out a little with water. You can still go back over the top of this when it's dry if you want to. You can see near the end of this drawing I use a Stabilo oil pencil to draw on top of the picture. I hope this video answers some of your questions, but if you have anything else you'd like to ask about Neocolors, please drop a comment below.
Why not check out our previous videos, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss your art kicks. Meanwhile, you can check out our podcast and find the creative challenges we have coming up at www.kickinthecreatives.com. Back soon!